Most of the time when I interview some guests, I challenge them. I ask them, when will your next book be out, and so on. And most of the people don't know like how to give me like a proper answer. Probably they're not working on it. And like 1 year ago, I was having a chat with my friend James Muir, the author of The Perfect Close, and I asked them, when will your next book be out? And they told me, I got something. I know that he's a guy of, like pretty clear in his messaging, but I didn't expect that book coming out so early. So happy to welcome back you here, James.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dwayne.
So, why are we here, James? Basically, not only to have a chat, but also to introduce what I think is the most compelling sales book I've probably read in the last, I don't want to be wrong, like 7, 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Uh, and when I asked you, when will your next book be out? I was thinking about, Perfect Close 2.0, 2.0, something like an evolution of the previous one, but you gave us more. You gave us the Perfect Close 2.0 and how to deal a sales cycle. So before we kick this off, James, if you want to just introduce yourself, because the audience grew in the last month, so probably someone is not familiar with you.
Sure. So I am actually a SVP of sales for a $40 million revenue cycle management company. I manage my own sales team. So I am a sales practitioner. I'm out there in the streets every day duking it out. And on the side, in the mornings, I write. And so that's how I wrote The Perfect Close and this new book, Unsticking Deals. And the reason that I wrote this is I do get a chance to meet with other companies. Usually they ask me to come in and talk to them in order to improve their close ratios. But what I had found in all these conversations is very often the problem really isn't that they have a problem advancing the sale. It's not a closing issue. They have other issues. And surprisingly, I found that their pipelines, I usually find them, they're very bloated. So they have a lot of deals in their pipeline, but they can't seem to get them all over the finish line. And so if you do a little homework, what you'll find is about 40 to 60% of all sales are actually lost to no decision. Okay, that means no decision. That problem effectively doubles the cost of every sale, while at the same time wasting about half of every sales professional's time. So it's really a very big problem. And so I searched out there for books that I could provide to my clients to help them address that issue, since that's usually not why they call me in. And I couldn't find anything. So I just ended up writing it myself.
And I think that this is, as I said before, it's one of the most compelling book I've read, and I think it's going pretty well. But that is a fun story behind your publishing. So if you just want to say a few words on it, because that made me laugh a lot last time.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about is I accidentally launched the book too early. So usually, as an author, you turn it on. In my case, I am self-published, so Amazon is actually printing the book, and you have to turn it on to get yourself copies, and then you turn it off again. And what I didn't realize is when I turned it on, a bunch of people must have set me as notify me when a new book comes out for this person, because suddenly we started getting a ton of sales. So literally, with almost no effort, we had hit number one in two different categories on Amazon. So technically, even without a launch yet, we're a bestseller.
You're already a bestseller. So, but I think that the most curious thing, like you mentioned at the beginning, you're not a writer, just a writer. You're a practitioner. Yeah, you sell, you manage your sales team, which is pretty uncommon now, because I've seen that, you know, all the solopreneurs now are just basically quitting their job and teaching all the stuff to the new salespeople. And I'm happy that you were able to, write a book for everyone. The way I see it is basically this. If you are in transactional sale, let's say mid complex sale or extremely complex sales, you can get something out of it, but you can also have a guide that teaches you your next step. Let's say that I'm a mid commercial guy who wants to move into enterprise or into strat. I got that guide and I can learn what to expect next. And these fix a big hole in the sales training of the companies nowadays, because they basically promote someone and they expect that they know how to do their job. And I want to know if you thought about this when you were writing it, or you were just going randomly with something that was happening in your mind.
No, that's a really good observation that you made, which is that I tried to make the writing broad enough to apply to any type of sale, but at the same time, there is a gap out there between people that might have learned with a somewhat simple sale that can close in maybe one or two, encounters or meetings with a customer, and then they get promoted to another type of, product or service that requires many steps. That is a very common place where people get stuck because the things that go wrong in a very complex sale are very different than the things that go wrong in a simple sale. And so I wanted this to bridge that gap so that a salesperson could understand, oh wow, there's more and different moving parts in my new sale than there was in my old sale. So hopefully it does a good job of bridging that gap.
Absolutely, and it's a clear map. You know what I found is that when I moved from, let's say enterprise to strat, what I was lacking is a map of what should have happened to close the deal. You know what I mean? It's like that was just me going blind and trying to figure out each time. But with this one, I think it's a really nice map on how you should at least behave, because everything goes unexpected in a complex deal. But on the other side, if you can visualize what should happen, you probably can make the right action. And this is what I found extremely helpful in this book. I just want to go a little bit back on what you said at the beginning. Like you were diagnosing for closing problems. You found out a bunch of other problems that were not related to closing. And I think that it's the main, like the heart of the book. And if you want to like just deep dive into it, that would be great for me, for the audience, and everyone else.
Sure, sure. Well, as it turns out, again, my job is to try to make complex things simple. I try my best to take what could be a really hairy topic and then simplify it down so someone could read it in maybe 30 minutes and then go, oh, I have a path. I know what to do here. So hopefully we've done a good job of that. But when you boil it down, there's just three things that cause deals to get stuck. It's sales issues, client indecision, and business case issues. That's it. Literally, if your deal is stuck, one of those three things is happening. And that is in the most common order that deals get stalled. So if it's stalled, it's really most likely that you must have messed up somewhere in your sales process. The second most common is client indecision, and the third, and it's not insignificant, but most people overly attribute. They think the reason their deal stalls is because there's something wrong with their business case. But in reality, it's usually one of those first two things. And so that's why we cover it in that order in the book, is because it's most likely going to be something that you did wrong in your sales process. It's some issue with the clients, they're indecisive for some reason, and we give some practical reasons and how to address those, and then how to address business case issues. And we get pretty granular, right? We start at the very high level, and then we get right down into very specific details.
Without spoiling like the book or like giving spoilers to people, like I have another observation, and I wanted to ask you a few questions on this, because on the book it seems that the book is not only addressed to salespeople, but only to sales managers, VP of sales, or of everyone else. But there is also an observation about how sales overlap with marketing. Like, for example, I don't know, let me take Appendix 1, okay? That is this appendix, how to identify your ideal customer. Now, basically, there is a lot of fight who identifies the ICP in a company, it's marketing and sales. And you basically ask salespeople to either validate what marketing gave them or maybe rewrite them. So I just want to know, like, how did you came with this conclusion? Because it's pretty, like close a book. You're basically telling like me, close a book, but mate, just review the job that your marketing team has done.
It's true. It's true. And the reason for that is, so there's basically five things that account for the majority of stalls due to sales issues. And the number one of those is what you just said, which is targeting the wrong customer. And the reason I chose that is it's all scientific. It's me going in, it's looking at someone's pipeline, trying to figure out, okay, why is this one stuck? Why is this one stuck? And what I found in the majority of cases, so literally number one sales problem, sales issues, number one within that is bad targeting. And that is, you're trying to sell someone that really isn't a perfect match for what you do. And selling to the wrong customer is literally the biggest waste of time ever. They have the longest sales cycles. They have the worst business cases. They have the slowest process that you go through. They have the most objections, and usually they have the lowest margin. That's why they're not ICPs. And it's not, it's not said that you can never sell outside your ICP. You can. You just need to be aware that when you go in, all of those other things are going to come out. So your deal might get stuck multiple times because you're not really selling to the right customer. And since most salespeople receive like a marketing qualified lead, what they need to do is spend a little extra rigor seeing, is this really? Is this really my ICP? And because all we have as salespeople is our time, right? So you got to protect your precious time by only selling to ideal customers. And I'm not saying if you get one that's a non-ICP, I'm not saying ignore it, but you need to make it a much lower priority than one that is a ICP, because they close faster, they're more profitable. That's why it's an ICP versus one that's not.
I think that these kind of appendix, also helps salespeople, but also sales managers to, speak with the marketing team. Like, okay, guys, let's go there, but let's not forget that we're basically testing hypothesis, which is something I don't see happening anymore. It seems to me that some companies just go there. Like I see it with my clients, our ICP is that one strategy, identified it, and then says people are not able to close. So I think that this is also important to, this is a really nice asset that I found extremely practical when I to speak to my marketing team, and this is something I really like.
Yeah, we could have written a whole book on it. I didn't want to divert the focus of the whole thing on Unsticking Deals, so I created an appendix that said, "Look, if you don't have one of these, you use this process with your marketing team to identify your ideal customer profile." And by the way, I had a client ask me one time, "Hey, what's the single biggest thing I can do to improve sales?" Right? And you would think, as a author of a best-selling book on closing, right, that my answer would be closing, but it isn't. What the data shows, literally, hands down, the single best thing you can do is sell only to ideal customers. Everything else is downstream from that. So if you're selling to the wrong customer, it won't matter how great you are at demonstrating or negotiating or any of that stuff, because it'll all go on deaf ears, right? So literally, the single best thing you can do is sell to only ideal customers. So it pays to take the time to figure out what that looks like, and then only focus on those.
I gotta challenge you on that. So basically, this appendix is your next book.
I'm already working on a book on referrals, so that'll be the next thing that comes out. And then after that, I have hopes to do one on discovery. So we'll see where it lands. But yes, you could definitely do one on. But you're right in that a lot of things that actually trip up salespeople are inadequacies in the connection between sales and marketing, right? Because sales is sort of dependent on marketing for assets. And so sometimes we don't have very good assets, and you'll notice several times in there I say, here's what to do if you don't have the asset, you need to build this, and if you don't have that asset, now here's the next best thing to do while you build that asset, right?
And like the other question on this, because that really triggered me, this appendix. Like the question I have for you is, how do we combine volume with quality? Like I've seen that, and probably you've seen it too as a VP, that there is a huge effort on, quantity in terms of metrics. A lot of SDRs who have to produce X amount of things per month. But how do we combine what we do on the field with the assumptions that the company has? Because most of the time we are forced to drive with our behavior what their hypotheses are. So what we can do, like just go there and fight.
Well, firstly, you vet it. You vet it, right? So the company might have its a value prop, and you need to vet it yourself and say, is this really the value prop? Because they may have missed it. I have seen entire product launches, multi-million-dollar product launches, based on weak or non-existent value props. So that's kind of where you start. And then the way I recommend it in the appendix is you identify the problems that your solution solves, and then you identify who has those problems. That's your target market, right? So that's another way of saying that problems are markets. And so if you have a good understanding of what problem your solution solves, you can go out there in the market and look at demographics and psychographics to figure out the people that are going to match that. So if you want to be a great salesperson, right, super successful, it's best to collaborate with your marketing team. But if they haven't done a good job of this, it has to be done. It's not like you can just ignore it, or you'll be operating at 10% efficiency. So you're going to have to do the work yourself, and then when you get one, you're going to want to qualify him in or out based on the work that you did. So, but in most cases, the reason that the marketing people don't do great work in this department is they don't have direct experience with the customers. And so that causes marketing people to write very vague value props, very vague messaging, which doesn't resonate because it's not speaking to the actual problem. So the way to solve that, in my opinion, is if you're an established company, a shortcut is you bring in some of your customers, right? Literally, if you have to pay them, bring them in, sit them in front of your sales and your marketing team, and ask them, hey, where are you getting the value out of this? What are the problems that you have that you're trying to solve? And believe me, you having a customer come in and tell will be way better than any training that you're doing internally, because it's coming right from a customer. But it's a very big shortcut. One of the things I've done as a manager is when I have a new salesperson, I will do what's called an internship, and I will put them out at a customer's site for a week or more to actually do the work that our solution does for the customer. And then the salesperson gets very personalized, real world experience about how the solution affects a change in the customer's operations. And then when they're having a conversation with the customer, they can say, when I did this, as an intern, here's how we did it, and this is the way that it worked. Then you're speaking from a much, much higher level of credibility. Well, if you did the same thing with your marketing people, they'd actually understand what you do. And then it would be a lot easier for them to write the copy that is needed in order to create the assets that sales uses every day.
It's basically theory versus practice. So it's and another like topic I liked in the book was like, let me mention the chapter 13, Unsticking Deals Caused by Champion Management. And I love this chapter, because most of us believe that we cannot like test our champion time over time. Let me put it in this way. We get in a company, we found the champion for a certain solution, and then we tend to believe that that is the champion for life, for the, I don't know, cross-sell, upsell, new projects or whatever. While on this chapter, you basically tell the salespeople to redo the homework. You give them the checklist and say, look, don't get too close to your champion. Like, I mean, love him, whatever you want, spend time with him, whatever. But like, study his profile or her profile again. This is what I love the most. Like, basic question, but which can open a lot of doors. Why did you write this chapter?
Well, because in complex sales, so in fact, if you're in a simple sell that's like 2 stages or something, then I actually say skip this chapter. Right? But if you're in a complex sale, probably the biggest problem is around stakeholder management and champion management. And people, what they do is they tend to enter in a sale at a single point, and they tend to over leverage that one point. And their wholesale is makes or breaks based on whether or not that one person is an effective coach or not. And that it's a bad assumption. What you need to speak to is every single stakeholder that's going to get affected by your solution. And that sometimes is tricky to do because sometimes it's hard to identify who the stakeholders are, and sometimes it's hard to get to those stakeholders. And so I offer some very practical tips on how to get, first of all, identify who they are, and second, how to get to those in a very, in a very friendly, facilitative way. And one of the best solutions is in the prevention chapter, which is you find a executive stakeholder and get him to be a champion for you, and say, hey, look, in order for us to help you accomplish your goal, I'm going to need access to all these different resources. If we get in a stuck position, we'd love to have you come in and help us unstick it so that we can help you achieve your goal. If you've got a champion stakeholder that will do that for you, you can literally unstick your deal at will, but you have to be a little bit proactive at the beginning of the process and get that person on board to help you.
And I think that it also makes like ties back to the whole concept of the book as I read it. Okay, what I got out of the book is that salespeople don't freak out if your deals tend to stick, or if few deals slow down? Because I think that there is a lot of panic around now, because like we are in the age we are, and it seems that most of us are not ready to see all these, ups and down and downturns of a sales cycle, while the book tells them, look guys, it's completely natural. uh, there is, I don't know, there are a bunch of words all around the world. There is a high inflation, there are massive layoffs. So just take a deep breath and then just go there and try to figure out how to unstick the deal. Because basically, you tell us to, just remove parts of things that can slow down the sales cycle. At least this is how I perceived it. And what is the another interesting part of the book for me, James? And I know I'm firing all these questions because I did my homework. Like part five, strategies for unsticking deals caused by client indecision. Okay, I think this is probably the the real, like, most, I don't want to say most important part, but most relevant nowadays. Because if you look at the metric, we're losing a lot of deals due to client indecision. So if you want to just say a few words on this, and then I ask you a few questions because I need you to validate a few of my points.
Sure, sure. So that's the granddaddy of all the real reasons, right? So if you've executed your sales process correctly and you didn't trip over yourself, then the next biggest reason that people stall out is because the client can't decide what to do. And the important concept that is there, it's this granddaddy concept, is called, the client is concerned at that either that the product probably won't deliver on the result that you're promising. Okay. And because of that, they seek a lot of information sometimes, right? Or they seek comparison. So if a client's asking for tons of information, or they say, hey, do you have a way to compare you against your competitor? What they're really saying is, I'm not really sure you're going to deliver on the result that I'm anticipating here. And the behavioral economic principle that's at play here, is that the client is worried that if they make a decision, it could go bad. And the risk of that to them is worse than the upside. So there's this kind of weird thing that happens in a sale. At first, we're selling against the status quo. We're saying, hey, you should make a change, because if you made a change, your life would be better. And then what happens halfway through the sale is the client starts to believe you. They're like, yeah, you know what? I think we should make a change. And then they do this 180. They say, oh my gosh, what if we actually change? Then all these other risks start coming to the surface, and that is what paralyzes most customers. That's what causes them indecision. So the salesperson has to identify when the customer's sold on the change, and stop selling change, because at the end, when they're worried about the risk of change, you don't want to keep selling change. That's just making the problem worse. When they've decided that the change is worth doing, then what we need to do, and the very short summation of that, is we need to show them they can't fail. Right? We need to show them that you will take care of them, that they will get the result that you promised. And there's lots of ways of doing that. Sometimes we do that with guarantees. We show project plans. We show all these different ways that say, look, we've thought of every conceivable way that you could fail, and we've got a way to guard against that so that you're going to succeed for sure. But we give you quite a few different ways of doing that. But what you're really doing is you're showing the customer, hey, you're not going to fail. We're going to take care of you. I promise you're going to get the result that you need. But you need to do that at the right time in the sale. And you can just ask a couple questions to figure out whether or not they've reached that inflection point.
Absolutely. And I think that you're basically telling us to reopen the dialogue. So, like, when we believe that it's already done, we got to reopen the dialogue and shift from, the salesperson approach to, I don't want to say customer success, but more like in a position to, this thing will never stop. You will be guaranteed. I will be here. We will be there. There will be our executive sponsors. There will be these outcome and these, and that. Um, another another question on the book, because there are stakeholder maps and so, but pretty open question about the book. Like, when you wrote this book, what did you expect to happen?
Well, to be honest with you, the reason that I wrote the book is my customers were suffering so badly from this problem. I thought, I wish I could just send them a resource and say, hey, do this, because I don't, I don't really specialize in helping customers unstick deals. At that time, I was just helping them close opportunities, right? So I have to focus because I have a day job, right? So when I'm helping a client, I have to focus on the place I can make the biggest difference. And what I just found is there was no really one great place to go to help them when they have a bunch of pipeline opportunities that are stalled out. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to simplify this down. And Tobiah, I won't lie, it was a pretty. I realized about halfway through the book, man, this is a pretty big lift, right? And so I did my best to simplify it and basically use the 80-20 rule on why deals get stalled, because there's more than is in the book. But at the same time, I wanted to make it so you could figure out, oh, that's my problem. What can I do to fix this? And then just go to the part of the book that has that. So I encourage people right at the very beginning of the book, if you've got a stalled deal right now and you want to fix it, maybe you want to jump to this chapter right here, and it will tell you how to solve that problem. And then you can go back and understand the whole thing. But I have tried to create it holistically so that you can understand not just how to fix it, but also why deals stall out, so that you can be flexible enough to apply your own thinking to how to uninstall a deal, because there's lots of different interventions that you might use.
And the other thing, and this probably is one of my last questions for you, is the fact that the book approaches both the strategy and the tactical part, and this is what I like the most. Like the book opens with prevention. Like prevention is basically strategy. So, why did you decide to start with prevention strategy one? How to secure executive sponsorship? Like, what did you notice that made you believe? Okay, let me say this at the beginning.
Well, believe it or not, the original draft of this book had that stuff at the end. So it was meant to go straight to the unsticking. And then at the end said, hey, by the way, you can just prevent all that from happening if you do these things instead. And then I gave it to some authors that I know, and they said, yeah, James, you really ought to be starting with the prevention strategies. And so I shuffled the whole thing around. And then those are, I provided those in the order that I think are most effective for preventing stalls. And getting executive sponsorship is probably the single most effective thing you can do, because you can always go back to the sponsor using that executive sponsor letter that's in there, and ask them, hey, you agreed to help us through this process, and I'm stuck a little bit. Will you help me unstick this? And if you get that agreement with the executive sponsor at the very beginning, you can literally, with a single phone call or a single email, you can unstick your deal just like that. And so it's the easiest, fastest way to unstick a deal. And if you start that at the beginning of your sales process, you probably won't get a stuck deal, or at least it won't be stuck for very long, because the sponsor will help you get through it.
Plus, I think it's also an added value and advantage for what comes next. Like, for example, in all the companies I've worked, I got one executive sponsor, tended to be like most of the time the chief product officer or like, let's say, chief customer officer. But if you bond with them, then they will be more than happy to send, and you do one deal good, they will be more than happy to guarantee for you. And this is what I learned. Like, I don't know, bringing my CPO there, we solve a big issue, in or out.
Mhm.
But then he will be on because he knows he can trust me, and I know I can trust him. So I think that this is
Well,
what works the best.
there's an ongoing component to it. If you use this strategy, you'll be able to leverage that executive sponsor even after the sale, with that existing client. But that you can have that executive sponsor help you get other clients. And so that'll be part of what's in the next book. Is that executive sponsor? You're going to be connected with them on LinkedIn, and if you use Navigator, you can actually go look at all the companies that guy is connected to, and say, "Oh, that would be a good customer. Oh, that would be," and then you can go see who he knows in that company already. You've already got the relationship with this executive sponsor. So now you're just going to come back to him and say, hey, do you happen to know this guy out at this other place? We think we can do good work for them. And boom, because the trust is already there from your previous sale, you'll be able to get to the next one. And when it comes to lead generation strategies, what I just told you there in 20 seconds, literally for me and my own teams has turned out to be the single most powerful strategy we've ever found for finding new business. Is you get one customer and you have that customer help you get other customers.
And let me call in a common friend we have, David Brock, who wrote this in 2019. Like he basically like switched he flipped the revenue, the demand gen system in his company. He said, no, 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 I'm going to hire two executive people to do like the BDR or the SDR job. And it turned out that, as in your experience, executives are the first like channel for building pipeline, or at least the most, like, let's say, relevant one. But we need to push them because it's not their job. So
Yeah, I think the problem with referrals in general is that people don't do it intentionally. They think that it just happens. And since it happened, like if you talk to anybody, I say, hey, what's the most effective channel? They'll all tell you referrals is the best one. And then you'll say, well, then why aren't you using more? Why aren't you getting more referrals? And this because they don't know how to turn it into an intentional way of generating new business. So David Brock is a close friend. I quote him several times in this book because he's brilliant. But what you're what he's telling you here is literally my personal experience as well. Is you're better off having one customer, and that'll lead you to another customer, to another customer. I mean, if I had to boil it down, I would just say do good work and let that customer help you get other customers. Now, there is some methodology behind creating an intentional way of doing that, and that's the the topic in the next book is how no one's there's books out there for how to do referrals for B2C, but there really aren't very many for how to do it with B2B. And so that's what my next contribution will be is I will show people in the B2B world how to leverage referrals much more intentionally than they're doing now.
when will the new book be out, James? You know
Well,
how I am. I just ask questions.
well, we will see. Probably we're less than 12 months out on this book because it was about 2/3 written when I started this one. And I thought, oh, I can get this done and help my customers out. And then I'll go back to writing the referral one. So right now I have probably 400 pages worth of content that needs to be shortened down. Right. So I'm in the simplifying stage of the referrals piece, but the crux of it is all completed and would have be we could share that with your audience on any day, even before the book's written.
Thank you so much, and I'm more than happy that I will be more than happy to hear from you. Like, I have one question, which is more for me than the audience. The question is, how do you create your books? Because you write a lot. You don't have time. I know you don't sleep. But when do you find time to write the books, James? I cannot picture this in my mind.
I'm a morning person. I'm a morning person. So if you want to write a book, and I highly recommend it, then you just get up first thing. You don't look at email. You don't look at the internet. You go straight to writing, and then you write for maybe an hour. And so for me, I get up at about 4:40 in the morning, and that's because nobody's competing for my time. I won't get any emails from my team. I won't get any emails from the company. And so I'm able to focus for at least a solid hour there. I also like to exercise. So I have to get up a little extra early because I'm a fitness guy. But what comes first, even before the exercise, is the writing. And then I'll do the exercise and then I can kind of go to work. Is the order that I do. But if you do that just over time, in doing that habit, you will be able to crank out, maybe, I mean, look at Jeb Blunt, right? Like that guy is a machine. He is producing at least one book every year. And so he's my mentor. Like he's got it down. I think I got a lot of writing under my belt, but man, that guy's got me smoked. And so, I really look up to him as far as authors because he's producing great material year after year after year. He's an amazing individual.
And I think that him, all these kind of, I don't want to say like the experienced sales trainers, are still creating books, not with the idea of selling a course or a master class or whatever. Like you still giving out everything. Like you basically giving practical tips, and then you tell them, you look, that is the medium way you can go with the book, go out and do your job. But then that is the pro way if you want, that is consulting, coaching, that is everything. And do you think it's still actual, this way of working, or should you, I don't know, give a little bit less to the people and
Oh
sell
no,
something else?
no, I don't believe in that at all. So people, especially on Perfect Close, where they had two magic questions, they're like, "Oh, should we? Is it okay if we mention the?" I mean, yeah, man, they give them everything. Give them everything. So I believe that if you give, you'll always get back more than you give. And so literally, the book is a little long. Like if I had gone to a publisher like Wiley, they would never let me publish a book with as much content as is in this book. And I had this conversation with Anthony Anarino about this, right? He goes, James, do you know how long this book is? And I said, yeah, it's about this long. And he goes, Wiley would never let me do this. He goes, I gave them a book that was 260 pages long, and they said, shorten it. It can only be this long, right? And so I don't know what the parameters are, but I don't want to be bound to that. So I literally tried to, as best as I could, just deliver powerful insights all the way through the entire book so that people be grateful that they had it, and it would be a valuable asset for them. So that's the only kind I give. And the same thing on a podcast, I am happy to deliver 100% of the secrets because I believe what you give out will come back to you. I really believe that.
That's a good point because people are still start getting picky with the things that they do. You know, they believe they hold the great secrets of this world, and then you ended up paying, I don't know, 5K for contents which are not that good. So this
Yeah,
is my
yeah,
opinion.
I agree. And for me, these books are not a way for people to hire me as a consultant because I have a day job, right? I have my own sales team. So I really don't have time to help every customer that wants me to help them, right? I can do a few, maybe half a dozen a year is all I can do. And so this is my way of helping them solve. Like the Perfect Close workbook was intended to let people run their own Perfect Close workshop without me, right? That's why it exists. So it's just because I have a limited time that I just try to give 100% so people can get pretty much everything they need out of the book. They don't really need to hire me as a consultant to get the job done.
And the perfect close is basically what, like, probably this is for the audience, guys. If your manager is asking you to create a closing plan, you're applying James theories, even if you don't know. So that's a good part because before your book came out, no one was talking about closing plans or whatever. Everyone was trying to, let's say, consider closing as a tactical thing instead as a project management path to the sale. James, last one question for me. We know the book, we know the next book, we know this one. Like, what will be the, like, in your mind, what will be the biggest compliment you can add out of this book? Like, what will be like the best thing you can hear from someone
Oh,
after reading this book?
so I have a folder. I have two folders, just so you know that it's not all one-sided. I have a folder that says accolades. And so my favorite, absolute favorite, is when someone either posts on social or they send me an email saying, "Oh my gosh, James, this worked for me," and then they tell me the story, and I save those to this little folder that I have. And so some days, you really question yourself, or you have imposter syndrome or whatever, and you go in there and you look at this, and go, "Oh my gosh, I've helped a lot of people." That makes me so even if I have the worst day, I can go in there and I can look at those, and I will be honest, I can get stuck in there for an hour easily, just reading all of these thank you emails, and that's very satisfying to me. Just for the record though, I also have one that says I suck. And that's when someone sends me a message saying I missed the mark, right? I made a mistake in some way. I save those as well so that I have feedback so I can improve myself. And so I don't try to spend too much time in there, but at the same time, you need constructive feedback. And I think that's especially true for managers because salespeople generally will not tell their manager when they're failing them because they're afraid of their authority. And so for me, if I have to basically beg for feedback and make it very safe for people to give feedback to me, or I won't have any paths that I can use for improvement. And so I think it's important to have both. But literally, if you like you read the book and you tried it and it worked, I would absolutely love you to either post it on social or send me a message in some way, either using one of the on Twitter or on LinkedIn, or you can just email me because my email address is right in my LinkedIn profile, and tell me what happened. And I'm very accessible. I really live for those comments that people do and say, "Hey, I tried this," and I love to hear the thing because it is very surprising to me sometimes the thing, "Oh, that's the part of the book that worked the best for this person," right? And even with Perfect Close, it's been very different from person to person.
Absolutely. And I think that it worked can be summarized in that way. So basically, if you read James' book and you drop him a message by saying it worked, it's the best that can happen to him. By the way, James, thank you so much for being here. as always, for this conversation. I'm looking forward to have a bunch of other conversations with you, maybe on the next book, maybe on something else. And yeah, thanks for the gift, because this is something that people don't know. I was ready to buy this book, but my friend James sent it to me as a gift. So thank you for this, James. Thank you for being on, and thank you for for contributing it that way to the to the profession.
Thank you, Tobiah, for having me on again. And I'll come back anytime.
Absolutely. Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.